Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. In the Kohberger case, justice will prevail. The Idaho families sue. And what are they suing over? Well, the family of Ethan Chapin and Madison Mogen are suing to prevent the court to release any more of those crime scene photos. Many of you sitting out there in YouTube land may say, well, they were sort of redacted. They sort of didn't show that much. But if one of those children in this picture here, in this thumbnail, was yours, would you want any type of picture being released to the public? And we all know what must be weighed here is the right of the public to know, and the right of the victims and the victims' families not to be constantly reminded of what happened on that fateful early morning of November 13th, 2022. So the families of Ethan Chapin and Madison Mogen have decided to sue to prevent any more photographs, any more crime scene pictures from being released. And what the common reason why these photos have been released is something used to be called FOIL, now it's called FOIA, Freedom of Information Law, or Freedom of Information Act. And most of the time, it's broadcast facilities and journalists who file these Freedom of Information Act requests to have information that the state, the government, the police, the district attorney's office is not looking to turn over. So that's what they do. And then they file that. And as in this case, hundreds of photos were released. And now they're on social media. They're everywhere. And imagine if the really intrusive photos, somehow someone got their hands on those. How horrific would that be for the families of these young students? I don't think anyone here or anyone watching this would want that. I just think that it's absolutely horrific. And you would want your children to be protected, especially if they were one of the victims of this horrific killer that we'll just refer to as BK. So folks, hold on to your hats, hold on to your seats, hold on to your loved ones, hold on to your thoughts. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone. The Police Off the Cuff Zone.
There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
And now a word from our sponsor. FanDuel is now a new sponsor of the Police Off the Cuff podcast. And you can go on FanDuel and you can bet the latest football games, and you can go on the site and gamble. It's legal in all states. And FanDuel is our new advertiser on the Believe Network for Police Off the Cuff. Joining me tonight, because this is such a heavy-duty topic, I needed some help here. We got retired NYPD Sergeant, professor at Albertus Magnus College in Connecticut, attorney. Welcome to the show, Professor Mike Geary. Welcome, Mike.
Bill, good evening. Good to see you. Thank you for having me on.
Well, it's always a pleasure. And we also have straight out of Brooklyn, retired NYPD detective. What's his name again? It's Phil Grimaldi. Welcome to the show, Phil. Let me get you on the screen.
Thank you for having me, Bill. Good to see you, Mike.
Good to see you, Phil.
It's always great to see you. So, guys, we've been talking about this case forever. It seems every day a new topic, some new thing comes up with this case. But the newest thing that we're talking about, of course, is the lawsuit by the families of Ethan Chapin and Madison Mogen in regards to these crime scene photos being released. And again, most of the horrific parts of them have not been shown. They've been redacted. But Mike, you're an attorney. What are your thoughts about this?
Bill, this is the public's right to know in open government, and we want to encourage trust between the public and the government. But also, you have to weigh the fact that these aren't just business records or maybe some sort of alleged fraud committed by a politician, maybe against the government, but this is serious crime scene photos with you have 4 young people who were slain. You can't get any more horrific than these photos. You, me, and Phil have been around many crime scenes, and people die horribly. And so this is a real terrible thing for the families that may actually have to see pictures of their loved ones, their beautiful children, in mutilated horribly. So you have this idea of the First Amendment versus personal privacy. It's going to be decided by a judge in Idaho soon, and I hope that he uses or she will use their discretion wisely.
Absolutely. Phil, I know that you have 3 daughters, college-age daughters, and I can just imagine this hits you very personally about this. And just the whole point of releasing crime scene photos. I mean, I've seen some horrific crime scene photos in my day, and they were never, ever released to the media or to the public ever that I can recall. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Billy, I don't know what the laws are specifically in the state of Idaho, but in New York, like you said earlier, we'd have a Freedom of Information Act request, a FOIA request. The acronym is FOIA. And what it would do is it would request information regarding a specific case. And like you said, Billy, I don't think I've ever seen crime scene photos, actual photos of victims that was released. And I think the families even said that they didn't even want the body-worn cameras from the police officers that responded to show their personal property, their rooms, even though it may not show the actual victims' bodies. So I get it. Everybody grieves differently. And, the family can avoid, let's say, watching the news that day or whatever, or avoid the pictures. But knowing that it's out there, it's kind of personal. I get it. If it's a close family member, like a daughter or a son, you won't want to have that kind of information out there. So I do understand where they're coming from. As Mike stated, a judge is going to make the decision on whether or not they will release certain things. And a lot of times with stuff that is released, they redact personal information like addresses, phone numbers, social security number, telephone number, things of that nature. So they do protect some integrity of the case with regard to things like that. But to want to release body cam video, I guess that's kind of in a gray area. But the crime scene photos, I really don't see that getting released. It would be a real battle to get stuff like that into the public view.
Absolutely. This is Brian Enton from News Nation talking about the release and the lawsuit against Moscow, Idaho.
Families of Madison, Maddie Mogan, and Ethan Chapin have now sued the city of Moscow, Idaho. Their lawyer filed an emergency injunction against the city to block the release of more crime scene photos. That emergency injunction, it was successful. It happened on Friday, and a hearing has now been scheduled for later this week to determine if the crime scene photos will be blocked permanently. Remember, some have already come out, but there are more that were about to be released, and the families are just heartbroken by all of this, and they want to stop it, and that's why they're suing now. After Bryan Kohberger was sentenced to life in prison for the killings, the Moscow Police Department, they released nearly 200 photos taken inside the off-campus house. Some of the pictures showed signs of a typical college student's life, but there were also really haunting photos. A bed covered in blood. We're not going to show them to you, but I'm going to tell you what they were, so you know why the parents were so upset. There were beds covered in blood. There was blood spattered on the wall. There were these big blurred sections of the photos where you couldn't see what was under the blur, but you basically knew. And that was enough to just devastate the families. So we at News Nation decided not to air any of the photos. Didn't feel they added anything to our coverage, but multiple media outlets did. They're all over the internet. The family members didn't even get a warning, by the way. There was no call from the city of Moscow or from the police, from the prosecution saying, tomorrow these photos are going to come out, or hey, do you want to come to the police department and see what we're about to release so that you can process it first. Look, that's happened in other cases. That happened with the Gabby Petito case. I remember the FBI called them up and said, come down, we're going to meet with you and we're going to show you everything we have before we release it. That didn't happen with these Idaho families. Several members of the victims' families spoke out against the release of the photos. There are reportedly about 180 more photos from the crime scene that are set to be released. Earlier today, I spoke with Leander James, that is the lawyer who filed the injunction on behalf of the families, had some really interesting things to say about why he does not believe the crime scene photos should be released. This is what he said.
They had reached a point by the time of the sentencing that they actually had some closure and were able to sort of start to move on somehow. Well, then they get hit with this, all of this ugly stuff getting released. And I mean, there's photographs that we don't want released that we probably can't stop. They're going to be released anyway. You know, the inside of the residence and so forth. That's bad enough. But to have the death scene photos out there, you know, who wants to look at this stuff? I mean, this is just plain wrong. And me personally, I'm a fan of the First Amendment. I appreciate what the media does, and I appreciate transparency and the right of the public to know. But there is a line there somewhere, and I think we're over that line.
So,
You know, I think he's so right. And the fact that I think a crime scene is almost like, remember they used to refer to ground zero as holy ground?
Mm-hmm.
Remember that it was a big cemetery? It was a big place where thousands of people were going to be buried. Not that they had anything to say about it, but that's where they were buried because the attack just destroyed that building and the force that drove it into the ground. And in the same way that was holy ground, my thoughts are that a crime scene where 4 people are murdered is somewhat holy ground. And what business does the public have to see these photos? It's none of their business. It really isn't. And the only thing I disagree with what this attorney just said is that I don't think there's ever going to be closure in this case for the families. That word shouldn't even be used in connection with this case. Mike, your thoughts in regards to what the attorney said?
So under Idaho law, section 74-102, the Idaho Public Records Act, there is a presumption, it's actually written in the law, presumption that all records are open for inspection, all government records are open for inspection, except specifically, there's a bunch of exceptions: juvenile records, workers' comp records, prison records, medical records, voter registration records. And so there's a certain class that is presumed not to be opened for the public inspection. And Idaho law does not specifically prohibit the release of crime scene photos. It's not one of the designations like juvenile records or voter registration records. However, it is therefore allowed, the judge who's going to review a case has a great discretion here, and the judge can, in their discretion, decide how the photographs may be and the documents may be redacted, and the also Moscow, Idaho, perhaps to if there's any sort of confidential informants to black out their name on documents. So there is some discretion allowed the municipality and judges to alter or change a little bit of the documents, like black out certain things to protect certain people's interests. But it has to overcome that strong presumption that all records should be open. So we hope that the judge will exercise discretion, but we should be prepared for the release of more of those records. And let's just hope, like Brian Hinton said here, that they just will be discreet enough not to release them. And please give the families a little break from this. They need it badly. All the type documents, I don't care. But the photographs, no, please. Hopefully that judge will say, no, we're going to edit them. We're going to, and some we're just going to keep sealed because they're just too graphic for the public to see.
Mike, can the judge rule that the photos don't be released at all, or they have to be redacted?
It looks like under Idaho law that the judge has tremendous discretion, along with Idaho, the city, Moscow, Idaho, to redact and to black out certain information, confidential information, like you even mentioned earlier. So it's possible that, and then the only thing that the news media can do is appeal the case, and that's going to cost time and money. They may not, but let's hope that the initial judge the Judge Marshall that's going to decide this case right now for the present will err on the side of discretion. That's my hope, discretion in the family's favor, and see where it goes from here. But I think this is an excellent case because it's such a horrific case that if the families win, I think it'll be great precedent for other families in the future.
Shocking that they didn't give the heads up to the family too. That's just unbelievable.
Well, Phil, that's been the history of this case. Phil, I wanted to ask you something.
Yes, sir.
I know you were a first responder to 9/11 and you've been
Absolutely.
to hundreds of crime scenes. A crime scene I always felt was a very personal thing between, of course, the victims families, and the investigators, and should be put out there for the world to see. It's no one's business. It really is no one's business seeing a human being at their worst possible day of their life getting murdered, and then for the public to have the right to see these photographs. I just do not get it. I don't see where the right comes in.
I have to agree with you, Bill. I think that the public's interest in specifics, like Mike had said, stuff that's written down, whether or not it be related to forensic evidence, the cellular data, things of that nature, video. I get all of that stuff being released. And even when you watch the news and there's a horrific accident, let's say a car runs through a red light and hits someone, they always stop it before they show the impact. So now, why should we go ahead in such a horrific crime like the Idaho 4 killings and release those photos that are taken after these victims had already been killed and they're mutilated? It's just something that is very, very gory to me. And I don't think that most people would even want to see stuff like that. I mean, when I talk about some of the things that I've experienced, and I just using words, family members or friends, where they're like, you know what, I don't even want to think about stuff like that. So there are some people out there that want to see this kind of stuff, but for the sake of the families and for the souls of these kids, I think we need to let them rest in peace. And like Mike said, I hope that the judge rules in favor of not releasing these crime scene photos.
100%. Back to Enton.
Yeah, just so I can better understand, where is the line for the families? Is it when you say death scene, if you can just kind of describe a little bit, like what do they find acceptable versus not acceptable?
Well, I think first of all, for them, I think it's an unwarranted invasion into their privacy for any of the interior photos to get out there or any of the gory photos. Now the law doesn't probably see it that way, and that's what our judge is wrestling with. I think from a legal standpoint, the issue gets to be whether it's an unwarranted invasion of their personal privacy for a specific image to be released. And I think the core images here are images of the death scene, the bodies, and those types of things. Okay, where the murders took place. Those I think are the most objectionable and are an unwarranted invasion and should not be released. I would ask anybody who sees this to think of the parents and the family members of these kids who were killed, and to think about how they would feel if they were in their situation, and to not view these photos. Please don't look at them if they're out there. And I would also similarly say to any news organization who didn't do what your organization did, who actually has published them or is thinking about publishing them, I would implore them not to go there. Don't do it. And I don't want to sound threatening. I think as a matter of just morality and ethics, I think it's important not to go there. If they go there, though, they put me in a difficult spot where then we have to consider whether they have a legal liability for the damage they're causing by publishing these photos. And like I say, I want peace. I don't want conflict. So just don't publish them, and there'll be no conflict.
And so Mr. James said that they tried to work it out with the city first. They didn't immediately decide to sue the city of Moscow, Maddie Mogen's family and Ethan Chapin's family, but that they couldn't work it out, so they filed the lawsuit. Thank you.
Oh my God, I was almost fast enough. I just didn't get it before Cuomo showed up. It's like a little joke. When is Cuomo going to show up? So, my question is, if something like this is allowed, and again, it seemed like the photos that they did give out, and they were many of them were redacted, so they didn't show the worst of it. But where is the line drawn, Mike? Could it be in a year or 2 years or 5 years from now they start showing autopsy photos because someone files a Freedom of Information Act or a Freedom of Information law? I want to see. I have the right to see autopsy photos. I mean, some crime scene photos can be pretty damn bad, just as bad almost as an autopsy photo. Where is the line drawn?
Bill, you're right, because you have to start somewhere, and you have to say enough is enough. Should we just leave it to common decency, like the gentleman James Leander said, the common decency, and say what would be the decent thing to do? What release, information files, but don't release pictures. If we go beyond that and we're going to release pictures, okay, we're going to release pictures of the furniture and the door and the front of the house, but we're not going to show any rooms. Okay, well, maybe we'll look at that, see where we go with that. Then we go a little further. Should we show blood spatter patterns? Okay, now we've done that. How about the next thing? Because remember, all the news outlets know this will not add one bit of information to the public knowledge base in this case, that they don't already know. All it will do is have people click on it and watch it. And there will be people who will think this is so gross and disgusting, but they can't take their eyes off it, like a slasher movie. That's the problem. Once you go from reports to actual photographs, then you're down a slippery slope. And then where does it end? And if you say you've been to autopsies, I've been to autopsies, it's a horror show, and you got to do it because it's your job. But it's like one of the worst aspects of your job. Do you want the public to see this? Does the public need to know this? Does if you want to release a report, no problem. Once you get to the pictures, then we go down the slippery slope. And I don't think anybody, when it comes to money, will say, "Oh, decency will stop me." Very few people will stop. They'll say, "I'll take
Mike,
the money."
you know what this is, Mike? This is a voyeuristic tendency of the audience as well as the broadcast media that's trying to satisfy the voyeuristic tendencies of their audience by getting and showing these photos. And how far does it go till they're actually showing dead bodies and all? They haven't done that, but that could be next. That could be next.
The line should be drawn right there, Billy, at the crime scene photos. I think it should be drawn right there.
Absolutely. Let's play from the Today Show.
Is choosing not to show you the most graphic pictures from this crime scene, but we do want to.
I love when broadcast media tries to tap themselves on the back. We haven't showed you the worst because our boss told us not to, but they act like they have some kind of moralistic perspective when they have zero.
True.
Warn you, some of the images you are about to see are graphic and disturbing.
This morning, for the first time, photos from inside that off-campus home where convicted killer Bryan Kohberger committed those grisly crimes. The nearly 200 images of the crime scene now obtained from the Moscow Police Department through a public records request by NBC News affiliate KTVB. Many of the disturbing photos redacted or blurred by authorities, but they shed light on the since-demolished King Road house where Kaylee Gonsalves, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin were killed back in 2022.
Are you pleading guilty because you are guilty?
Yes.
The last vestiges of a typical college home, an open front entrance with a wreath hanging on the door, a living room with a backpack and red plastic cups scattered on the floor, photos of staircases, a bedroom and bathroom where an investigator's reflection is seen in the mirror. But the images also show signs of the attack, including blood spots on a hardwood floor. And this is the glass door that police believe Kohberger opened to enter that home.
The person that slithered through that sliding glass door now stands before the world and this court unmasked.
Kohberger seen in this previously released photo moments after his arrest. And police also now releasing this video taken from a neighbor's porch in the early hours the morning of the murders. A white car captured speeding away. With his trial just weeks away, Last month, Kohberger pleaded guilty to all 4 murders to avoid the death penalty. But the victims' families had one last opportunity to confront him. Kaylee Gonzalez's sister, Olivia, delivering one of several emotional statements during his sentencing.
You're a delusional, pathetic, hypochondriac loser who thought you were so much smarter than everybody else.
The families now carrying on the memories of the 4 lives lost.
I mean, everything about Kaylee was amazing.
She was going to light the world on fire, and we're missing her. You know, we're missing her.
Yeah, every day.
Just again, I can't imagine. Laura.
So, you know, here we are, and you can understand why the parents are suing. And you can also understand why the media wants to show them. It's all about ratings, you know, it's all about bringing an audience to this. So when they say, oh, we're warning you, this is like, it's so, I want to vomit when I hear them say that, because they know exactly what they're showing. They know exactly why they're showing it, what they're doing. And, you know, look, does the general public have the right to view crime scene photos? And in my opinion, no, they don't. They don't. So that is what a judge is going to have to decide. Does a Freedom of Information Act, Freedom of Information law request circumvent all other morals, law, and integrity? Or does that document, the Freedom of Information Act, just supersede all of the things I just previously mentioned? Phil?
Bill, I think that if the judge does decide to block the release of those photos, at least what it'll do is it'll create a situation where whoever wants them released, whoever files that Freedom of Information Act, they'll have to go to an appeal. So it'll cost them money. It'll take time. And I would hope and pray that the appeal version of this rules the same way that the judge rules. Let's keep our fingers crossed for that. Because as I said earlier, I think that the line has to stop with something like that. Crime scene photos. I mean, even in those pictures that we just saw, we saw personal items that belong to those kids. And now those families have to look at that and say, well, that's my son's backpack, or that's my daughter's pair of shoes, or whatever it is that's in those photos. And I think it's causing a harm to those families. It's causing a damage, so to speak. So I think that there definitely is an argument, and I'm sure that Mike could speak to it since he's an attorney. You can make an argument that there is a damage being done here. The damage is that the families are feeling emotional stress and distress by these pictures, these images being broadcast throughout the throughout the entire world through the internet. So I think that there's definitely an argument to be made. And I think that, you know, even though we have that amendment, we still need to have an ethical line that needs to be drawn with regard to victims of serious crimes like this.
Absolutely. Carol Grayston, thank you so much. Carol just gifted 5 Police Off the Cuff memberships. And at the very early start of the show, she had gifted 5 more. So she's gifted 10 Police Off the Cuff memberships during the show. Carol, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And all the people that are the beneficiaries of Carol's generosity, you can thank her too. We really appreciate. She's one of our mods. She does a fantastic job. I appreciate everything that Carol does. And I could see some of the folks in the chat that are beneficiaries of this. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. If you like real crime, true crime, from a police perspective, you're in the right place. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button, hit the like, give us a thumbs up, share us with your friends and your family, and make lots of comments. And if you want to contribute financially, we have a Spotify with 4 different levels. And we also have, a Patreon with 4 different levels. And we also have a YouTube channel membership with 5 different levels. Look at this. It's getting contagious. Ali just gifted 5 Police Off the Cuff memberships. Thank you so much, Ali. 5 lucky people. There's 15 lucky people altogether for tonight's show. We really appreciate that. This show, you know, we try to keep it real, and we have a really great fan base, subscribers that join us every night. This is another thing about the judge blocking the Idaho crime scene photos.
So an Idaho judge simply So in Idaho, judge temporarily blocking police from releasing photos inside the bedroom of one of Bryan Kohberger's victims after her family took legal action. Police will not reveal any more crime scene photos after nearly 200 images were made public, including this one showing the bedroom floor where Maddie Mogan and Kaylee Gonzalez were found. Joining us now is Fox News contributor and Idaho Statesman investigative reporter, Kevin Fixler. Kevin, thanks so much for joining the program.
Good morning, Lawrence.
So what do you make of the court blocking the release of these photos? I mean, this is great public interest. I understand why the victim families wouldn't want that type of information out there. But since the trial is over, the suspect is now in custody and all of the legal process is over. This is kind of like the land of ultimate obvious, right?
Well, what you have here right now is a temporary restraining order issued by the district judge out of Latah County. And interestingly, it's actually the same judge who handled Bryan Kohberger's arraignment. But now she's in charge of making this determination. And the mother of Madison Mogan and actually the parents of Ethan Chapin, Jim and Stacy Chapin, have signed on to this lawsuit as well. And they're seeking, as you said, to stop the release of additional crime scene photos from inside the King Road home. There's a hearing tomorrow morning, and we'll learn more on whether or not this constitutes an unwarranted invasion of privacy to the families.
One of the things we learned when we were covering this case for about a year, the Gonzalez family has made it very clear they believe that their daughter was the target here. And there was an allegation that came out in a report about hearing Kaylee's name. This is what the police chief said about that. Let's watch it.
So, Chief, there's some recent reporting that Kohberger was heard by Dylan literally saying Kaylee's name during the attack. Is that accurate? Did the task force hear this?
Not that I can recall. I'm not quite sure where they got that report, but that doesn't seem accurate to me.
So you don't remember hearing anything about him saying the name of...
You know, I get a little annoyed by this chief's reaction. He doesn't remember. You know, in a case like this, I would probably almost have the complaint follow-ups memorized. I would know what every single one of them said. And in one of these, and I saw it the other night, in one of these complaint follow-ups, it was an interview with Dylan Mortensen. And she said exactly that she heard the man who she didn't know at the time was Bryan Kohberger say Kaylee Gonzalez's name. Now the chief here is denying that ever happened. So that doesn't give me a lot of confidence in whether or not the truth is being told here. I have a big problem with the truth here. Phil.
Absolutely, Billy. And what I found, I did a lot of research on this. I'm glad you brought it up. She was re-interviewed. The initial interview, she said she thought that the person who killed her friends mentioned the name Kaylee. But then in a follow-up interview, I don't know how long after it was, could have been a couple of days, could have been weeks, she retracted that. And she said she did hear some speaking, but she didn't hear an actual name. So I think that's where the confusion comes in. And why couldn't the chief just say that, what I just said, right there, that initially she may have stated that she thought she heard Kaylee's name, but now when there was a follow-up interview done, and it would probably be like what you said in a follow-up investigator's report, that she redacted that she retracted that she said no, that she thought about it and the name wasn't mentioned, but she did hear someone say, "You'll be okay." So something, I don't know if that's the exact wording, but it's paraphrased. So he could have clearly, and Bill, you're right. He's in charge of that case. He should know that. He probably does know that, but he just went with, no, that's not true, because she changed up. You know, she retracted what she said about the name being called. So I just get the feeling, and Bill, you and I talked about it before we went on the air, that there's something going on here that they don't want to talk about certain things, whether it be a motive, whether it be a connection to any of the victims. It almost seems like they're shielding that. There's more here than meets the eye. And I agree with you, Bill. The way he's coming across almost like well prepared with what he's about to say. And again, we know that politics is definitely playing into some of the things that took place in this case. So I think that could have been easily cleared up by him right there.
Yeah, I think that it seems to me that the investigators in this case, who I've seen interviewed, seem very timid. and not sure of themselves and just treading on very thin ice when they speak. And that's not the nature of investigators. Investigators want to, when they're successful, they want to talk about all the things they found out, all the things they knew. And a lot of investigation, I always say when I taught criminal justice, investigation is an art and a science. And you combine the art and the science, and you have a powerful weapon to get the truth. But in this case, I'm not seeing a lot. Sometimes you do what they tell you never to do, assume. But sometimes you can use a different word in investigation. You can use the word hypothesize. Hypothesize, is it the same as assuming? Well, a hypothesis is an educated guess. And sometimes you make leaps to the next place because you're putting two and two together that may not scream 100% this means this, but for example, we're reading in that article from The Independent that at one time BK's phone did hit the Wi-Fi at the Mad Greek restaurant. Now, if you ask this chief that, he'll deny that to the end of time.
It was twice, Bill. I believe it was twice. There was at least 2 times.
But there are 2 investigators by the name of Heather and Jared Barnhart.
Yes.
That did the investigation for CX Strategy Cellbrite. And they said that is an actual fact. And the fact that he washed his, tried to get rid of the records on his phone and on his computer. Those are things that in-depth searches that the investigators on this case, they're not talking about it. They're acting as if it never happened. That bothers me because all of us were looking forward to this trial so we could find out things uncovered by the prosecution through the use of evidence. Professor Mike.
Yeah, Bill, when you see the chief talking, and we saw an interview a couple of weeks ago with Bill Thompson, they're given the lawyerly answer, or the answer that a lawyer will tell somebody. Instead of saying no or yes, you say, I'm not sure. I don't recall. I don't remember that. Could be. I don't know. You're hemming and hawing all over the place. And the thing about you're right about the Barnharts is because some people have said that his cell phone connected with the Wi-Fi at the Mad Greek restaurant twice. Other people have said he just looked it up online. He Googled it and it popped up in his phone. Other people have said, well, he actually went there on 2 occasions, ordered pizza, and one of the waiters physically remembered him being there. And so that's where a trial would clear up any misconceptions, and we would get a clear answer, to the issues. But these guys and this chief, it's like he's given the lawyerly answer. And when people are giving the lawyerly answer, usually they're hiding something. I'm sorry to say that, but usually they're hiding something.
I think you're right. Julie Miller from the chat. How can anyone believe that he targeted the victims first when that house was the perfect location to hide, stalk, and carry out his fantasy? He found the right combination of factors to be successful. Julie, thank you for your comment. And I'll answer that by saying 23 times he reconned that location. To me, that says he targeted that location. Other things that we're learning, like what we just spoke about, his phone hitting on the Wi-Fi inside the Mad Greek restaurant, him reconning that whole area, driving around that whole area. To me, that says he also had other things in his phone that the investigators are not talking about. Pictures of students and really inappropriate porn that he had searched. So they're not talking about the totality of the investigation, and all those things to a seasoned investigator means something. And when the chief here just dismisses it, it sort of drives me a little bit crazy.
Kaylee or any of the girls.
Correct. The only thing that I believe was reported was that he said something. Someone heard a voice say something along the lines of, it's okay. I'm here to help you.
Kevin, what do you believe? Where is this information coming from?
So I spoke with Chief Anthony Dollinger on Monday, and this report actually comes from a recent trove of Idaho State Police records, reports that were released just on Monday. And we've long been told, including through the probable cause affidavit, that Dylan Mortensen, one of the two surviving roommates, told police, and for over the course of many interviews, said that she heard someone say, "It's okay, I'm here to help you." But the Idaho State Police report included Kaylee's name specifically. So when I spoke with Chief Dollinger, I asked him the same question. He responded similarly, that that is not law enforcement's belief. I also spoke with Idaho State Police Lieutenant Darren Gilbertson, who was one of the two lead investigators on this case, and he confirmed for me as well. They don't believe that that was accurate. It was a matter of telephone. Somebody misspoke or someone misheard, and that's how that ended up in that report.
Yeah,
I don't buy that. I don't buy that at all.
She said it. She said it.
Well, first
and then
of all,
she
Phil,
retracted what she said.
Phil, when you heard through your investigative career, I'll repeat a phrase that was said to you a million times. If it's not on a DD5, it was not done, right? Yeah. And if it is on a DD5, which means a complaint follow-up, it was done. This was written down, memorialized. Don't try to pull back from it now, because to me, that says cover-up. It says lack of integrity. If you're trying to pull back from that statement right now, I'm not liking that.
That's going to, it's basically going to impeach the testimony and the credibility of a witness if you said this on the first day, but now you've retracted what you said and you're changing your statement. So that's something that's an opening for a defense attorney to try and make and create reasonable doubt. So I think that the fact that they didn't have to go to trial and answer to that, it seems like something that's so minuscule that they could explain right now. And it's almost like they're covering it up. And I just don't like the way that they're communicating some of this evidence. And Bill, I think you hit the nail right on the head. It almost seems like they were threatened with, you'll be fired if you say the wrong thing, because it seems like they're walking on eggshells when they do an interview and they do give out some information. So there's something there. Listen, I'm very strongly believing, and I think, Bill, you go along with this. We said this from the beginning, that politics and that school played a big part in this. They had that house knocked down before any of the trial took place or before the plea took place, and that was wrong. We always said that. There was a stay that was done by the prosecutor's office, but then I guess the school that owned the property now, Idaho, the college in Idaho, they wound up pushing and they got it destroyed, and I just couldn't even believe that. So that tells me that they have a very strong political grip on that community.
100%. Susan 03, they showed Maddie's or Kaylee's Doc Martin shoes next to the bed.
Exactly.
I can't imagine seeing that as a parent. They showed blood spatter. That was the blood from their children being slaughtered. Susan, you're preaching to the choir. We agree these photos, we don't believe these photos should be released. They're no one's business except the investigators and the court if it in fact did go to trial. Other than that, no one has a right to see these photographs. This is, again, retired NYPD Inspector Paul Morrow interviewing the chief from Moscow, Idaho, in regards to this case.
Moscow, Idaho Police Chief Anthony Dollinger responding to the rumors and speculation surrounding the 2022 murder of 4 University of Idaho students.
He took our next guest inside the investigation and settled some of the questions that we've been asking for nearly 3 years. Take a look.
There's a lot of speculation in this case about the cross-country drive. Mm-hmm. Was he identified as a possible before he left town?
No.
I want to talk about that. And Phil, we spoke about this. What was the date, Mike? You might have this better. What date did he leave for the drive toward Pennsylvania?
Well, he was, I have the, let's see.
You have the date of the car stop, right, Mike?
Yeah, he was officially terminated as a teaching assistant on the 19th. And the car stop was after the 19th. I'm not exactly sure what day of the car stop, but he probably left around the Monday, around Monday the 19th.
The 19th of December.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to put something out there. This chief from Moscow said that they did not have probable cause against him when he left to drive toward Pennsylvania. Now, on November 29th, 2022, a security officer at Washington State University doing a search of all the vehicles registered on that campus came upon a white Hyundai Elantra registered to one Bryan Kohberger, who was a graduate student at that university. And on another date, he changed the plates on the car from,
I believe that was the 18th of November, Bill, if I'm
the
not
18th
mistaken.
of right, the 18th of November. He changed the plates because a Pennsylvania plate, there's only one plate on the car. So if the car was caught on video, it would have been caught with only one plate. So he re-registers the car, of course, again to his name, but to him and his new license in Washington State. And now the vehicle has two plates on it. That was done as an attempt at deception to, basically hide it from the police. Let me go back to this chief here.
We did not have his name.
And he was
All
not.
right, so you heard that. He just said we did not have his name. That is not true. You did have his name. Why is he not telling the truth? November 29th, this officer from Washington State University matched the white Hyundai Elantra up to the name of Bryan Kohberger. Is he acting dumb, or is he acting like that's not enough, Phil?
And the vehicle that they put the bolo out, his car fit into that category. I think they gave a 4 or 5 year range that the Hyundai Elantra fell into, and his car fell into that range. And he supplied the investigators with that information. So they definitely had that name and they had that vehicle from that date. Now, whether or not they were saying 100% this is the guy, I think they were looking at him pretty strong at that point because it's within driving distance to the location of the homicides, a short distance, and it falls in the specific year and the make and model and the color of the car that they were looking for, speeding away from the crime scene. So I don't know how he can say that they didn't have his name. That name was in the case folder, I would believe, from the 29th on of November.
Ali from the chat, they dismissed the car because it wasn't the right year. Ali, you're probably right, but law enforcement should never do that because in the science and the art of investigation, things are never 100%. The only thing that gets close to being 100% is the science. If you can really have science like DNA or scientific things that absolutely match it up. But the art of investigation, you have a white Hyundai Elantra. You don't know exactly what year because the video is not clear enough. And it's not like TV where the cameras are so good you get the license plate. No license plate could be read on this.
I think they gave a 4 or 5 year range, and his car, his specific vehicle was like 1 year out of that range. So to me, that was close enough. And I would definitely be taking a very hard look at.
But Phil, I would have known the name of this guy, and for the chief to say we didn't know who he was, I'm not finding that truthful. I'm really not.
I agree with you. I agree.
I think it's, we'll see.
Not even on the radar as a likely suspect when his father came here and drove away with him.
That's correct. Obviously, if we'd have had that information, he would not have been able to leave the area.
Bullshit. There he is again. That's not true. And first of all, there's another guy in law enforcement saying that the car stops were inadvertent. Nonsense. They were choreographed. They were planned. The FBI called the Indiana State Police, pulled this car over. Anyone that believes anything else believes in Santa Claus, Mickey Mouse, and the Easter Bunny.
Twice, Bill. Twice,
right?
Once,
Right.
I could say, all right, coincident. Twice, I don't know. A guy that's being targeted for the homicide of 4 individuals gets pulled over twice when he's leaving the state. I don't believe in that kind of coincidence.
No, and to me, the only thing I'm wondering is why. Why are they now still not telling the truth?
So the reporting that the FBI was trailing him cross country and then lost him and all, that's all wrong.
Completely wrong. We had lots of different leads, and we tracked down each and every one of them. It was painstaking. And, until we got to the end of this, I can't remember exactly how many people that we looked at, but we did hundreds of interviews with so many different people. And each one of those, it was almost weekly, if not almost daily. We would have a new lead. Our investigators dug right into it and dispelled that rather quickly.
Any indication that he didn't act alone?
No.
Where's the murder weapon?
Don't know. I mean, we looked at every angle, but we live in North Idaho, or it's a rural area, and a K-bar knife is a relatively small item. So it's endless where that could be.
There was some reporting right around the plea deal that there may have been a second weapon involved. What did the task force think? That there was a second weapon used, or was it just the knife?
All the evidence showed that there was one singular knife that was used to kill all four of the victims.
You know, I think he could have touched upon something else there, all right? There's no indication of a second weapon. However, he could have used the same weapon in a different way. For example, the butt of the knife or the handle of the knife to hit someone in the face, namely Kaylee Gonsalves, who had horrific facial wounds. And that same K-bar knife could have been used as an instrument of blunt trauma also. But I don't know why. To me, this chief doesn't have a great deal of investigative experience.
Bill, the things that you just talked about were in the autopsy report. There was bruising on the face, and they described the patterns. And obviously, we think the handle could have been used, and he could have addressed that right there, and he didn't. He just says, nope, it was just a knife, you know. And listen, I don't think anybody knows for certain what exactly was going on in that room other than Bryan Kohberger, but I mean, I think we can, you know, come to a conclusion based on the wound patterns that are on the face that it could have been the butt of that knife.
And, you know, we all have said also that we wanted to see during the hearing where he pled guilty that he would have been required to answer a few questions. And it's so lackadaisical by the prosecution. Oh, he would have just lied to us. How could you say such bullshit, Bill Thompson? He would have just lied to you? Then make it part of the deal that he has to go out into the field and show you where he dumped the damn knife and the bloody clothing. Why couldn't that be part of the deal?
And your investigators are there to try and corroborate what he tells you. If he starts to tell you stuff that's bullshit, you go back and you tell him, listen, we know you're lying. If you want this deal, or you're going to go back into, we'll proceed with the trial and you'll get the death penalty. So that's what the investigators are there for. So I think they really dropped the ball on that point. They had a good opportunity to get something from BK, and they just took the plea and they didn't.
They got nothing. Absolutely nothing.
You have gotten probable cause to arrest him without the DNA?
I believe so.
Based on what?
Our investigators were very confident that based off of where we were going with the vehicle and the information that we gathered, we would have got there. I don't know what our timeline would have been, but I believe we would have got there.
Now we're into the prosecution phase. You guys have done this incredible work, big task force, 6 weeks or so, and you managed to roll this up. What was the feeling in the task force when you began to hear they're going to give him a plea?
You know, it's one of those things that we all understand the processes that our legal system has, and it was never dashed out of our minds, or at least in my mind, that it was a possibility. I do know that I was in the room when Bill Thompson gave us that information that they had reached out, the defense had reached out asking if they would be willing to entertain that idea. And it was very quick, just to dispel the whole plea thing as well. Because I know every time somebody hears plea deal, right, the whole word deal makes everybody feel like they're getting off. The suspect's getting off somehow. They're not getting their full extent. Now, the only thing that went off the table on this was the death penalty. And I think Bill Thompson said it best. He said he was sentenced to death. He was sentenced to die in prison.
And then we got the Dateline show.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any indication as to who leaked it all?
Not at this point, and there's not much I can say because I do know that there's still an active investigation into that matter. There was a special prosecutor, a special investigation judge that were appointed.
What was the feeling in the team that had worked so hard that all of a sudden this leak occurred and it was all over the TV as you're going right into trial? I mean, was there a morale effect on the team?
I don't know if there was a morale effect. We rallied together because we all believe that it was wrong, and that, you know, number one, we didn't believe any of our people did it. However, if that was the case, we were ready to hold them accountable. And I know I met with the leadership at Idaho State Police and the FBI, and we talked about it, and we all agreed to, you know, we wanted to be as open and transparent with this investigation as possible, and we have been to this point.
Let's bring in five.
So I don't know. There's something about this investigation that I'm not liking, and even now at the point where there's no more gag order, right? So they can tell the truth. They can admit things. They can tell us things that they knew as investigators that we didn't know, but they're telling us nothing. They're really telling us absolutely nothing. Your thoughts, Mike?
Bill, as I'm listening to the chief, and giving that interview there, I'm just wondering if the Moscow Police Department, the Moscow detective in charge, was really only the lead investigator in name only, and that really this was a Idaho State Police FBI joint investigation, and that maybe some of the local stuff the Moscow police did, but that really that chief and the Moscow detective really weren't as involved as people think, that it wasn't like a joint effort. We each did a third of the work. We each get 1/3 of the credit, but that he doesn't really maybe even know, this chief, all of the reports, that maybe he himself never even read all the reports, because he's factually wrong in so many instances. And we've looked at like maybe 3 or 4 already in 20 minutes. So I think there's they don't, what they're trying to hide also, part of what they're trying to hide is maybe Moscow PD's uninvolvement in the actual bread and butter investigation. That's my hypothesis.
I think you could be right. It's hard to explain, because I think there was several agencies working this. There was the FBI, the Idaho State Police, the Moscow Police. The Moscow Police, though, were the lead agency.
Yeah.
Whether that is just in name and they were actually told to take a back seat and watch the adults run the case, I don't mean to put them down, but they don't have experience with a case of this magnitude. They absolutely do not. Folks, FanDuel is a new advertiser for the Police Off the Cuff on Believe, and we really appreciate FanDuel, who sponsors us and makes this show possible. FanDuel is backed up by the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, UFC, PGA, and you can go online and bet with FanDuel. FanDuel, the new sponsor of the Police Off the Cuff podcast. Great to have them on board. So, Phil, I mean, it's hard to describe. It's hard to describe all the inaccuracies we're getting from this investigation. And we, like everyone else here, wanted to hear a nexus between the victims and the perpetrator, a nexus between the perpetrator and the house, a nexus between some of the locations in Moscow, Idaho. But yet we're getting nothing, Phil, and it doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, one of the things that intrigues me, listen, there was definitely some type of a connection. We know that his phone hit the Med Greek on 2 occasions, and I'm not sure if he found the location and then stalked the victims, or stalked the victims and found the location. Of course, the location, if one of the things that you just played from Fox News with Inspector Paul Morrow, he showed how there was a direct line from like almost across the street, where you went through like the trees right to the back door. So he was able to surveil that area and not be spotted from a short distance away. So I'm not sure if he found the house and then stalked the victims, or vice versa. But I really believe, and my belief is that there was definitely targeted. I'm not sure if it was Kaylee or Madison, but I think that someone in that house was definitely targeted, and he went right to the location where he believed that they would be. So I think that part of it we can really sit with. But the other thing that you were just talking about, Billy, with regard to, and I think Mike touched on it, when you have a major investigation, and Bill, you could talk to this too. Sometimes there's so many people, like let's say, God forbid, a police officer is killed, or some major, homicide of a public figure goes down. There's so many people in and out of that case. So you're right. The case detective doesn't have a grip on everything that's being done at the time. However, once the arrest is made and there's a lot of review and you're going to have to go to court and you're doing trial prep, if you're a good detective, you're going to know everything that's in that case file, which could be boxes and boxes. But now we have this captain that probably doesn't know everything that's in the case file. I think that the lead investigators perhaps does. But at the time when it's going on, when you have a task force formed, and I've been involved in a few of those in my career, there's so many moving parts, so many people doing different things. You can't physically know everything that's being uncovered at the specific time. But like I said, once the case, there's an arrest made, you get a good night's sleep, you take a deep breath. Now the process starts to unfold, where you're going to go to trial, you go to trial prep hearings, different things of that nature. So now you're studying all the information and you're putting everything together, and you're going to have a nice tight case, and you're going to want to know everything that's in there, because you're going to be on the stand testifying, and all you need is, like I said earlier, a defense attorney that can poke a little hole into some minor thing in your case, and now he's creating doubt, which you don't want.
100%. Mike, what are your thoughts in regards to why at this point they're really not coming clean as to what in fact happened? And I'm almost feeling, I don't know, I don't want to say we're being lied to, but we're not being told the truth.
Bill, I think that they don't want to get into the weeds and start, having press conferences with really searching answers and, and that sort of thing. I think really what they want is to give answers like we saw with Paul Morrow from Fox who's an inspector from the NYPD, talking to that captain. And he's like, I never heard of Bryan Kohberger. Nope. It was almost like he wants to get through the interview. Not to my knowledge. Nope. He won't say anything. He won't refer to any documents. He won't refer to any timeline. I think he's afraid that the more questions he answers substantively with facts, the more questions there will be. Because every time you ask a question and you get an answer, it opens up another avenue of inquiry. So I think he doesn't want to do that. I think he will be respectful, but he's like, no, yeah, not that I know of. And you're getting these kind of off the cuff kind of, I don't mean that as a joke, off the cuff, like really not well thought out kind of answers. And he just wants to put time in and get through the interview. And I don't think he wants to do anything more than that. And that's enough for him.
Mike, I wonder if there is any thought in the town of Moscow that the town or Idaho University has any civil liability over this. And that would explain everything. If they have civil liability, then that would explain why they're not talking about anything. Your thoughts, Mike? You're the attorney.
Yeah, I'm thinking now, who owned the house? It was a privately owned house. So it wasn't like a city-owned apartment building where you'd worry about, the lights and any kind of, alarms or anything like that. I'm not so sure, because as far as I know, and I could be wrong, that's a privately owned dwelling. It wasn't on the campus. It was like right next to the campus or within real close walking distance of the campus. So I'm not sure if they're thinking that they're worried about civil liability, like as if the security gates weren't working or security guard wasn't on duty that night when the homicides occurred. I'd have to know a little bit more about the actual ownership and the distance where it was with the university. Perhaps if it's really adjacent to, like, say, the property, like it's across the street from property, and maybe security was supposed to patrol down that street and they didn't. Okay, well then maybe there's a little negligence liability there. I'm not sure. I'd have to know a little bit more about the actual physical, location. But that could possibly be that maybe they're thinking that there is some liability. If there was even one report from, say, poor Kaylee that she was harassed, if she actually made one to the police and it was ignored, or she called up the police and it was ignored, I think that could possibly be a little bit of liability issue. But it's possible. It's possible.
Someone just wrote, I heard SG say it's too late for civil action and has passed the time limit. How do you know, Elsa, if the people didn't file within 90 days? How do you know? You don't know. They could have filed during the time period.
Billy,
You
in
know,
New York, I think it's a 3-year time period that you could file a lawsuit of take civil action. So I guess every state is different, but I think the point that we're seeing is evasiveness. It seems like in any communication or press conference, they're being evasive about something. And Billy, I really think it's got to do with the college. Listen, if you were living in that town and you're going to be known for 4 young college kids being slaughtered by a serial killer or a soon-to-be serial killer, you wouldn't want to have that moniker. So I think that they want time to pass. They took down the house. They want to try and get as far away from that as possible. They don't want that negative publicity. They don't want that negative connotation associated with Moscow, Idaho. And I do get that. Believe me, I do. But I don't think that, you should interfere in, criminal investigation, or you should interfere in, specific information being given out. So yeah, politics always has a hand in these type of things.
Aracelis Alonso from the chat, I believe the university was concerned with their reputation and future enrollment. That school is the financial backbone of that town.
Yes.
That's why the house was torn down. Aracelis,
Voila.
you're 100% correct. And I hate to beat it to a dead horse, but you're preaching to the choir. We believe exactly that. Something is telling us something here is preventing the investigators from telling the truth, from coming clean. And a civil suit would explain, but we're not sure what angle that could take. Who could they sue? And there's no doubt in my mind that some of these families, especially the Gonsalveses, they'd be sued. They'd be the first in line to sue, any of them, the Chapins. And, this guy got into you could actually sue the owner of the house.
Sure.
You didn't provide an adequate safety in this house. There was poor lighting. The door didn't lock, the sliding. They could look. He'd have to defend himself. Is that why they knocked this house down so quickly? So that there couldn't be an inspection by insurance companies?
Good point.
Is that why? And then, of course, the University of Idaho, to me, I don't know them, but I think they are definitely the demon here, because they couldn't knock that damn house down fast enough.
Billy, I think you're really hitting on something here, because there could definitely be a liability to the owner of the house if complaints were made to him previously about security issues, whether it be lighting, a lock on a door, a fence, a gate, an alarm, a video camera. If those issues were presented to him and he didn't act on them, and then he gives the house away very quickly, I think, to try and maybe shield himself from liability, that could be one of the considerations too.
Mike, I want to ask you this. Aracelis Alonso, very good comment. The owner of the house cleared himself by gifting it to the university. That's not true. He owned it at the time of these crimes. That does not absolve him. What's that called? That's
covering your ass.
No, there's some Latin term that's called, I think.
Ex post facto.
Ex post facto, right.
Yeah. No, yeah. At the time of the murders, would be the official date. Who was actually the owner of the property on that date, November 13th. If he gifts it to the college later, that won't immunize him. But it's a good point. Look, it's CYA. It's totally CYA.
And Mike, how about what this Crypto Catherine's saying from the chat? She's right. The families could sue Washington State University Pullman. An argument could be made that the professors knew BK was a danger to his fellows. 100%.
Yes.
You saw the document that was written by one of those professors.
Oh, yeah.
Here, we're getting somewhere. We're getting to the civil liability involved in this case. And I think that's why the investigators are not telling the truth and they're not opening their mouths. We just discovered it from the Police Off the Cuff podcast, NYPD, we're figuring this out. And I think there's a lot of truth behind it. You want to know the truth? Follow the money.
That's always the way. That's always the way. The owner of the house has a tax liability that he can shield himself for taxes by donating the home. And perhaps there was conversation before he donated it to the university that, if we get it in our grips, if you donate it to us, we're going to knock it down. So all of that could have been played out post, the incident happening. And I think Mike is right that even though he gave it away, he's not going to be shielded from a liability, because it would be the liability on whoever the ownership was at the time when the incident took place. So I don't think he would be shielded there, but it's like in his best interest to gift the house. And I think, Bill, you said it before we went on the air, he'd never be able to sell it after what took place in it. So he gifts it, he gets a tax benefit from that, and then they knock it down. So, like I said earlier, they wanted to get as far away from this horrible incident as possible. It had to do with people, there was the break-in, and parents pulled their children out of the school, they unenrolled them because they were afraid that there was a serial killer on the loose. So, and I think that person that just put in the comment, future enrollment, 100%. So they had a political motivation, and the town, garners a lot of revenue from the college being there. So that right there is probably one of the motivators and the political viewpoint of why things took place in this case. And we said it right from the beginning, because we had the mayor doing the press conference, and then people from the college and right in the beginning. So we knew that there was going to be politics, pulling at the strings of this investigation.
I think that there is no doubt there is some civil lawsuit angle to this. And here we just figured this out live on this show tonight. There is definitely some civil liability here. Not sure who, but I guarantee there's attorneys slapping lawsuits all over the place in regards to this case. And what the lawsuits are pertaining to, I don't know. Lack of security could be one, though. And someone in the chat raised the specter of suing Washington State University because a professor knew there that BK was a psychotic, a future serial killer, and he put it on paper. Mike.
Yeah, I mean, the theory would be a tort liability for negligence, but you would have to show as a duty, breach, injury, and causation. And so it would, the person suing would have a lot of work to do, because you're asking a jury to step into the shoes of the faculty, the criminology faculty at Washington University, and say, yeah, the guy's a knucklehead. He's having fights with Professor Snyder. He's having fights with the female students. They've emailed them several times. They've met with him, putting him on probation. But the hard part is hindsight's 2020. We know that he is a sick puppy, and prisoner 163214 deserves everything that he gets. But at the time, was it that plain that he was a killer, or just a person who needs to get away from this program because he's an idiot, and maybe possibly harass someone? But I will tell you, when that professor, I think it's a female professor, when she wrote he could possibly be a sexual abuser, that's the kind of words that really could impute a little bit of liability, because if it's that plain to a professor in the first couple of months of just knowing this guy, a jury could say it's so obvious, even at that moment going forward, not even hindsight, that this guy was a real dangerous person. It'd be interesting. It'd be really interesting to see what would happen.
His behavior was odd, and they recognized it. So I do see the possible connection to a liability suit there.
Yeah,
absolutely. So, folks, we started out tonight talking about the families that they want to stop these crime scene photos from being disseminated, and that's they're going to court. We also segued into why, when this investigation is over, that we're not hearing more of the truth coming from the investigators. And that is a little bit concerning to me. Mike, your final thoughts?
I would just say that to everyone who's watching, if these photos are released, any more photos are released, please do not click on them. Please not click on any company or any sort of YouTube channel that's showing them, because that's a horrible thing. And let's hope that the judge has the decency to say, look, you know what? Forms are fine, reports are fine, but no more photos, no more. That's it. And just let it die. Let's hope for that.
Absolutely. Phil, your final thoughts.
Final thoughts. It may seem trivial to say, well, my child's belongings are being put out there, but when I saw that pair of shoes, and someone in the comments put that those were Doc Marten shoes, that's something that's very specific. Now, God forbid if that was your child or your loved one, and now you're seeing their personal belongings out there in the media and on the internet. It's very, very hurtful. It's very damaging. These families have gone through enough. Let these people go on with their lives. Let them find some peace. And I always close with Ethan Chapin, Madison Mogen, Kaylee Gonzalez, and Xana Conodal. May they rest in peace, and may their families find peace and comfort.
100%. Very well said. Folks, I want to thank everyone for tuning in tonight. I'm Bill Cannon from Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. Have a good night, everyone, and God bless.
Stay safe, everyone.
One episode just ain't enough.